Hey everyone! Welcome to Anime Dreams. Glad to have you here on my YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into the next chapter of our exciting fanfiction. What if Naruko mastered the Snake Sage mode? Part 2. Disclaimer: this content is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in this video. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Now, without further ado, let's get started. With an unconscious Sasuke slung over one shoulder, Kakashi decided to inform his students about the approaching chakra signatures to prevent them from reacting defensively, especially Naruko, given her injured leg. There are 3 incoming chakra signatures, but there's no need to worry, Kakashi stated quickly, noticing the tension building in both of his students. About half a minute later, 3 figures emerged from the treetops, bowing respectfully toward Kakashi as if he were the Hokage. "We sincerely apologize, Kakashi-sama, for not arriving sooner to assist in your battle. We only became aware of the situation when we sensed that final surge of chakra and heard a faint disturbance in the distance," the leader of the 3 Chunin explained, bowing his head. Kakashi waved off the apology. "It's all right. My students sustained injuries during their first real battle, so we need to get them medical attention. Naruko, in particular, has a broken leg that requires treatment." Nodding in understanding, 2 of the Kuza Chunin stepped forward and carefully supported Naruko, each taking one of her arms over their shoulders to help her move more efficiently. Once the group of 6, one of them incapacitated, arrived at the gates of the Hidden Grass Village, they had to part ways, each tending to their respective responsibilities. With Kakashi occupied with trade negotiations and Sakura volunteering to take Sasuke to their lodging, Naruko was left in the hospital, awaiting medical assistance. Upon reaching the hospital's reception area, the 2 Chunin informed the receptionist of Naruko's condition. Without delay, she called for a medical ninja to attend to her. Seated in the waiting area, Naruko didn't have to wait long before 2 individuals approached her. The first was exactly what she had imagined a doctor or medical ninja would look like, dressed in traditional medical attire. The second, however, caught her attention. This person seemed too young to be a doctor, appearing only slightly older than Naruko herself. Her outfit was unlike what Naruko was accustomed to seeing on other girls, such as Sakura, Ino, or even Hinata with her oversized jacket. The girl wore a full-length mesh bodysuit beneath a skirt, paired with a tan, button-up polo shirt accented by a dark brown stripe running across her chest. Her style was notably different, more tomboyish than anything Naruko had seen before. However, the most striking feature was her vibrant red hair, cascading down to her waist, paired with deep red eyes that seemed to hold an unusual intensity. Black-rimmed glasses framed her face, giving her a distinctive and intriguing appearance. Naruko was snapped out of her thoughts when the older doctor addressed her. "Karen will be handling your treatment. She is a medical ninja in training, and I will be here to supervise the procedure." Glancing at Karen with a mix of curiosity and nervousness, Naruko hoped she was in capable hands. When she offered the red-haired girl a polite smile, Karen hesitated for a moment before returning the gesture. "What's wrong with me? I don't usually react like this," Karen thought to herself, feeling a little flustered. Once they moved to a separate room for treatment, Karen finally spoke. "The receptionist mentioned you have a broken leg, yet you don't seem to be in pain. You must be really strong to handle an injury like that so well." She kept her eyes on the clipboard as she spoke. Before gaining more experience, Naruko might have grinned and boasted about her strength. However, after witnessing firsthand just how much she still had to learn, she had come to appreciate honesty in moments like these. "Actually, my sensei used a jutsu on my leg to numb the pain and prevent me from moving it. I'm guessing you know what technique he used?" Naruko asked, her first real experience with medical treatment sparking a bit of curiosity. She nodded. "All right. Naruko, I need you to either remove your pants or roll them up and keep them in place so I can carefully take off your shinobi sandal." The girl with glasses quickly clarified when she noticed the surprised expression on Naruko's face. "Now, Naruko, you've actually gotten the best possible outcome for a fracture. Since it's a clean break, Your recovery time will be much shorter. All that needs to heal is the two bones fusing back together. Typically, when someone breaks their ankle, the bones can shift and damage the surrounding ligaments and tendons. These are essential for movement and can cause significantly more pain. If that had happened, the healing process would take much longer, Karen explained in a professional tone, making sure to clearly outline the injury and its treatment. So, what color would you like your cast to be, Naruko? Orange? Karen asked with a dry tone, though she couldn't help but chuckle afterward. Naruko scratched the back of her head awkwardly, laughing along. She knew her clothing choices weren't the best, not even by her own standards. But shopping for clothes in Konoha was always a hassle, with prices unfairly marked up for her. Shaking off those unpleasant thoughts, Naruko responded to Karen's question. No, I'll go with red, she said, matching Karen's dry tone, hoping to turn the conversation in her favor. A faint blush crept onto Karen's face. She hadn't expected Naruko to turn the comment back on her like that. Once the cast was set and after a long 2-hour wait for it to fully harden, Naruko was finally ready to go. However, before leaving, she turned to Karen with a hopeful expression. Hey, Karen-chan, would it be possible for you to give me a full medical checkup? I'm an orphan, and I haven't had one in a long time. I'd really like to know if everything is okay with my body, Naruko asked, flashing the same warm smile that Karen had seen when they first met. Karen hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right, but for a full examination, I'll need you to remove all your clothing so I can properly assess everything, she explained, her face quickly turning red. Naruko's cheeks flared up as well, her usual tan complexion overtaken by a deep embarrassment. The idea was undeniably awkward, but she weighed her options. Doing this back in Konoha would mean being examined by someone she knew, which she wasn't comfortable with. Karen, being from another village, seemed like a better option. At least there was a chance they wouldn't cross paths again after this. Letting out a resigned sigh, Naruko muttered, Fine, let's just get this over with. I know this is going to be uncomfortable for both of us, and judging by your expression, I'm guessing you feel the same way? Karen, too flustered to speak, simply nodded in agreement. With a deep breath, Naruko hesitantly removed her jacket and shirt, exposing her lean frame. She had always been aware that she was skinnier than most of her peers, but seeing it now, in a medical setting, made it feel more real. It was a reminder of the struggles she faced growing up, struggles that included not being able to afford proper meals or knowing how to cook for herself. Thankfully, the fox's presence inside her had compensated for her poor diet, allowing her body to recover faster than most. Karen, however, was taken aback. She had expected some signs of physical strength, but instead, Naruko was almost entirely skin and bones, with little visible muscle or fat. Feeling self-conscious under Karen's gaze, Naruko quickly removed her pants, struggling slightly as they caught on the hardening cast. Now standing in just her undergarments, she shifted uncomfortably. Noticing the way Karen was staring, Naruko's patience thinned. Can we just get on with the exam instead of staring at me? She said, her tone sharper than she intended. Almost immediately, she regretted the harshness in her voice. Karen flinched slightly, realizing that she had indeed been staring. Guilt washed over her as she refocused on the task at hand. Right, sorry about that, she mumbled. Could you lie down on the bed? It doesn't matter whether it's on your back or stomach, whichever is more comfortable for you. Naruko nodded and chose to lie on her stomach. She wasn't willing to risk Karen seeing the seal on her abdomen. Questions about that were something she wasn't ready to answer. Karen began her assessment, taking careful notes. From what I can see, most of your health concerns stem from being underweight. If you focus on gaining some weight, you'll likely feel stronger, move faster, and have more energy for training and missions. Naruko grimaced. She had already suspected that would be the diagnosis, but hearing it confirmed made it all the more frustrating. I really need to find a way to eat more. If I want to become a great ninja, I can't keep ignoring this. Karen continued, your leg injury might not have been as severe if your body had been in better condition. A lack of proper nutrition weakens bones and muscles, making injuries more likely. Naruko sighed internally. Great. Just one more reason to change my eating habits. Though embarrassed, she appreciated Karen's honesty. If nothing else, this examination had given her something to work on. Once the red-eyed girl and Naruko paused their conversation, she took the opportunity to examine Naruko's cast, checking if it was stable enough for her to walk with the help of crutches. After a thorough inspection, she determined that Naruko was ready to move around, but before giving the final confirmation, Karen called for her teacher to take a look. She needed his approval to ensure her work met professional standards. After the head medic completed his assessment, he officially cleared Naruko to move. Grateful for the care she received, Naruko wanted to properly express her appreciation to Karen. Once she retrieved a pair of crutches from the receptionist, one she would have to return before heading back to Konoha, Naruko turned to Karen one last time. Thank you for everything, Karen. I'm really glad you were the one taking care of me, she said with a sincere smile. Then, in a gesture of gratitude, Naruko gently took Karen's hand and placed a quick, respectful kiss on it. Before Karen could respond, Naruko turned away, her face flushed with embarrassment. What Naruko didn't see was Karen standing there, completely stunned, her face turning a deep shade of red as she tried to find her words. Unfortunately, Naruko had already left, but even so, Karen finally managed to murmur her reply, knowing that the blonde girl wouldn't hear her. Thank you. I hope we meet again, Naruko, she whispered dreamily before shaking herself back to reality. With a soft sigh, she turned back to the tasks her teacher had assigned her. Frustrated by her limited mobility, Naruko felt restless. The energy flowing through her, especially with the Kyuubi's chakra aiding her recovery, made her eager to regain full strength as soon as possible. Determined, she decided to return to the hospital shortly after being cleared. Karen was occupied with her work when a familiar voice broke her concentration. Hey, Karen, I wanted to ask you something. Do you have a moment to talk outside? Naruko asked. Karen had assumed that once Naruko's cast was secured, she would spend the rest of her time in Kusa with her teammates. She certainly hadn't expected to see her again so soon. But if she was honest with herself, she was happy to see that bright, sunny smile once more. Once outside, Naruko hesitated, struggling to find the right words. Memories of Sakura's past rejections lingered in her mind, making her nervous. Taking a deep breath, she finally spoke. Karen, would you like to go on a date with me? She asked, hoping for a positive response. Karen was taken aback. Why would someone, especially a visitor from another village, ask her out? Back in the academy, none of the boys had ever shown any interest in her, so this unexpected request left her completely stunned. A flood of thoughts rushed through her mind, making her momentarily forget where she was. Noticing her silence, Naruko grew anxious. Karen, I'm not saying this has to be anything serious, she quickly added. I just thought it might be nice for both of us to get a little experience with dating. That way, if we ever meet someone we truly want to be in a relationship with, we'll have some idea of what we're doing. These words snapped Karen out of her daze. She finally found her voice, but before answering, she asked something that had been weighing on her mind. Why me? She questioned softly. There are plenty of other girls out there who are prettier. Did you ask me just because I was the first girl you met in Kusa? A hint of insecurity laced her words. She never liked how others received attention while she often went unnoticed. Naruko was taken aback by Karen's self-doubt. She didn't understand why Karen saw herself that way, especially since Naruko thought the opposite. Well? It's true that you're the first girl I met here, Naruko admitted, unaware that her words initially stung Karen. But that's not the reason I asked you, she continued firmly. I don't know why you'd think you're not pretty, because you are. You have a great smile, and your hair is amazing, you might not realize just how unique and beautiful it is. A faint blush dusted Naruko's cheeks, but she didn't let it stop her from speaking her mind. Karen's red eyes met Naruko's deep blue ones, searching for any sign of dishonesty. Do you really mean that, Naruko? She asked hesitantly. Seeing the sincerity in Naruko's expression, Karen suddenly acted on impulse. Without thinking, she threw her arms around Naruko, hugging her tightly. A nervous blush covered her face as she quickly pulled away. Naruko chuckled at her reaction and moved the conversation forward. So, for our date, I was thinking we could grab some lunch. You just finished work, and I know I'd be starving after training, so it makes sense, right? She suggested with a grin. Karen nodded, smiling. She couldn't remember the last time she felt this happy. Today was shaping up to be a wonderful day, one that nothing could ruin. But first, Naruko paused, glancing down at her clothes. I think we should stop by a shinobi clothing store. I need something decent to wear so I don't embarrass you. Besides, having a girl's opinion on what to buy should help me pick out something nice, don't you think? She asked with a playful smirk. Karen giggled and nodded in agreement. If Naruko was serious about improving her wardrobe, then Karen was more than happy to help. When they stepped into the store, Naruko was immediately struck by how different the clothing selection was compared to what she was used to in Konoha. Back home, most of the clothing available for purchase consisted of traditional kimonos. However, in Kusa, the fashion scene was entirely different. The village had embraced modern styles that Konoha had dismissed, believing they wouldn't appeal to buyers. So, Naruko, how much do you need to buy today? Judging by your outfit, I'd say a whole new wardrobe is in order, Karen teased, grinning as she enjoyed the newfound experience of spending time with someone her age. Naruko found herself in a similar situation. Looking back on her days at the academy, she realized that Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba weren't exactly close friends, more like casual acquaintances. Smiling back at the red-haired girl, Naruko nodded. Yeah, it looks like I do need a new wardrobe. Would you mind helping me out? Of course, kind sir, kind ma'am, Karen giggled, amused by Naruko's politeness. None of the boys at the academy had shown her even half the level of respect Naruko did. So, what kind of clothes do you like, Naruko? Karen asked, already envisioning different outfits and wondering which styles would suit her best. Naruko took a moment to think before responding. With that in mind, Karen started pulling clothes from the shelves, handing them over for Naruko to try on. Due to her injured leg, changing took a little longer than usual, but once she was ready, she called Karen over. When the door opened, Karen was greeted by a completely transformed Naruko Uzumaki. She now wore a pair of black track pants that tapered at the ankle, paired with a burnt orange hoodie accented with black trimmings and drawstrings. To complete the look, she swapped out her worn and stained blue headband for a sleek black one. Both Naruko and Karen admired the change. It was a significant upgrade. Just as Karen was about to ask about Naruko's food preferences, a loud growl from the blonde's stomach interrupted her. Flushing slightly, Naruko quickly suggested, well, Karen-chan, how about we talk over some lunch? As the two young ninjas strolled down the street, they unexpectedly encountered someone Karen had hoped to avoid, her main tormentor. Karen had always felt like an outcast due to her striking red hair, which was rare in her village. Outside of her father, she was the only one with such a unique feature. Trying to maintain her composure, Karen hoped the girl wouldn't notice her. Unfortunately, the bully's gaze had already locked onto them. She seemed particularly interested in Naruko, finding her quite attractive. In her mind, she believed she was doing a good deed by saving Naruko from spending time with someone like Karen. Karen's stomach dropped as she saw the bully approaching. Naruko, noticing Karen's sudden discomfort, followed her gaze and saw the approaching girl. When she finally reached them, the girl spoke with an air of superiority. You know, Karen is kind of a nerd, she said dismissively. Someone as cute as you shouldn't be wasting time with her. But don't worry, I'll let it slide if you come hang out with me instead. I promise you'd have way more fun than with the outcast. She smirked, expecting Naruko to agree. Karen braced herself, assuming Naruko would abandon her. But then came a single, firm word. No. Karen was stunned. The confidence in Naruko's voice was undeniable. A warmth had surrounded them before, but now the air carried a distinct chill. It was unwavering, absolute. The bully, caught off guard by the rejection, attempted to mask her embarrassment, straightening her posture before walking away with feigned dignity. Still riding the emotional high from Naruko's unwavering support, Karen instinctively reached out and gently took Naruko's hand. Naruko, feeling the soft grasp, turned her attention away from the retreating bully and looked at Karen. The slight squeeze on her hand was accompanied by a genuine smile on the redhead's face. That was all it took for Naruko to return the expression. This had become one of the best days of her life, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. The only real challenge that remained was deciding what to eat for lunch. The debate was playful, filled with laughter, and neither of them stopped smiling for even a moment. Eventually, they settled on a restaurant that specialized in cuisine inspired by Kumagakure. It was a new experience for both of them, making the day even more memorable. With a slight hesitation in her voice, one that either the waiter or Karen noticed, Naruko made her selection. "May I please have the mild mutton curry?" she asked politely. The waiter, much like Karen, seemed to briefly wonder if Naruko was uncertain about whether the dish was available. However, she simply nodded in response, to which Naruko replied with a grateful, "Thank you." For their drinks, both Naruko and Karen opted for water, wanting to fully enjoy the flavors of their meal without distractions. As they waited, they engaged in a conversation that, to them, felt like only a few minutes, though in reality, nearly 4 hours had passed. "So, Karen-chan, what was it like growing up in Kusagakure?" Naruko asked, hoping her friend hadn't experienced anything too harsh. Karen glanced down, a flicker of hesitation crossing her face. She wasn't sure why she suddenly felt compelled to share pieces of her childhood, memories that carried their own weight of pain. But when she looked up and saw the concern in Naruko's expression, she sensed a kindness that reassured her. "Well, it was difficult," Karen admitted softly. "My mother passed away when I was 3. She had cancer, so I don't have many memories of her." As she spoke, an ache spread through her heart, the weight of those words settling in once again. Without a moment's hesitation, Naruko reached across the table, gently taking Karen's hands in her own. She wasn't sure what to say, but she wanted Karen to know she wasn't alone. "I understand that feeling, Karen-chan," Naruko said warmly. "I'm an orphan too, so I don't know what it's like to have parents either. But I can imagine having a father who could protect you from all the bad things out there must be an amazing feeling." She sighed wistfully, wondering what life might have been like if things had turned out differently. Karen's sorrowful thoughts began to fade as she saw the vulnerability in Naruko's eyes. She quickly shifted into a mindset of wanting to help, whether it was physical pain, like Naruko's previous injuries, or the emotional wounds that came from a childhood without a family. With a deep curiosity, Karen asked, "Naruko-kun, can you tell me what it was like growing up as an orphan?" "Of course," Naruko replied with a small sigh. "I won't lie, it was tough." The seriousness in her voice made Karen focus even more. "For some reason, I always seemed to receive less than the other kids at the orphanage. By the time I was 7, they sent me to live on my own because they thought I was ruining the chances of other kids getting adopted." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. The idea of a child being forced to live alone at such a young age was heartbreaking. How could anyone expect a child to fend for themselves like that? Naruko continued, her voice steady despite the memories. "The orphan fund was supposed to help kids like me, but for some reason, I always received the smallest amount possible, just enough so no one could question it." It was clear to Karen that Naruko had endured a great deal of hardship, yet she had found a way to keep moving forward. "But there was one thing that made everything even harder," Naruko added, drawing Karen's full attention. "You know about the Kyuubi attack 12 years ago, right?" she asked, causing Karen to nod in confusion, unsure of where the conversation was headed. Naruko hesitated, scratching the back of her head before glancing around nervously. It wasn't a story she had ever told before, and the weight of it made her anxious. When they couldn't defeat the Kyuubi, they had to seal it away. And they sealed it inside a baby. That baby was me, Naruko explained, her voice quiet but firm. When people in the village found out, they believed I wasn't just carrying the QB, they thought I was the QB. Because of that, they did everything they could to make life difficult for me, like refusing to let me into hospitals or libraries. Karen was stunned. To think that Naruko had endured so much, yet still had the strength to stay hopeful and kind, it was truly inspiring. Before Naruko could continue, their meals arrived. If she were being honest, it was the best food she had ever tasted, not that it was saying much, considering the only things she had to compare it to were spoiled vegetables and instant ramen. Once they had finished their dessert, Karen turned to Naruko with a determined look. "Naruko-kun, what exactly does your diet consist of?" she asked, already planning ways to improve it. With a firm nod, Karen finalized a nutrition plan for Naruko, eager to help her develop healthier eating habits. Holding out the paper, she beamed with pride. "Here, take a look and tell me what you think." As Naruko scanned the paper, she noted how it detailed the various nutrients and elements essential for maintaining peak physical condition. It was precisely the kind of information she needed to achieve her goal of becoming an exceptional shinobi, not just in her own eyes, but in the eyes of the entire shinobi world. "Even though there are some things here that I don't fully understand, you clearly do. So, I'll trust you to make the best decisions for my health," Naruko said with a small grin. She was gradually getting better at playful banter, and as the evening continued, she found herself more at ease while interacting with Karen. Karen, on the other hand, kept adjusting her glasses in an attempt to hide her deepening blush. No matter how much she tried to stay composed, Naruko had a way of making her feel flustered and completely out of her element. Eventually, the moment they had both been avoiding arrived, it was time to part ways. Neither of them had realized how much time had passed until the restaurant staff politely asked them to leave to prepare for the evening rush. They had spent nearly 4 hours together, lost in conversation, but neither had any regrets. Their farewell was unexpectedly heartfelt. Both silently wished they belonged to the same village because, if they did, a second date would have been inevitable. Karen, feeling a rush of nervous excitement, anticipated heading home to reflect on what had been a near-perfect evening. To Naruko's surprise, Karen gathered a spark of confidence and leaned in, placing a soft, tentative kiss on her lips. She had intended it to be a quick, fleeting gesture, but the moment lingered longer than either had expected. What was meant to be a brief kiss turned into an innocent, exploratory moment as they hesitantly adjusted and repeated the gesture, figuring out what felt right. When they finally pulled apart, Karen's face turned an intense shade of red as realization dawned on her. Overwhelmed, she nearly lost her balance. Naruko, equally stunned, was grateful for the support of her crutches, which kept her legs from giving out beneath her. Karen quickly averted her gaze, twirling a strand of her hair between her fingers as she tried to process what had just happened. "I should go. My dad wouldn't be too happy about this, and I don't want to upset him," she said hurriedly. Before Naruko could respond, Karen leaned in for one last brief kiss and then dashed into her home, closing the door behind her. Once inside, she flopped onto the couch, heart pounding, unable to stop herself from daydreaming about the incredible evening she had just experienced. A tiny voice in the back of her mind reminded her that her father might not approve of what had happened, but at that moment, she didn't care. This was her happiness, and she treasured it. Outside, Naruko remained rooted in place, stunned by the unexpected turn of events. She certainly hadn't anticipated sharing a real kiss with someone that day, let alone with someone as wonderful as Karen. But she wasn't complaining. As she made her way back to the apartment where Team 7 was staying, Kakashi's voice suddenly broke the silence. Though his words were directed at her, they were spoken loudly enough for Sasuke to hear as well. "So, Naruko, I hear you've taken a liking to the color red," Kakashi remarked, his tone laced with amusement. Naruko felt her face heat up slightly as she recalled her parting moment with Karen. She quickly turned away, unwilling to give her sensei the satisfaction of seeing her flustered. Sasuke, meanwhile, observed Naruko's changed demeanor. He tried to decipher the meaning behind Kakashi's comment but could only see the red medical gauze tape securing Naruko's pant legs. Realizing it was likely an inside joke between Naruko and their sensei, Sasuke dismissed it and returned to his own thoughts. Naruko, however, caught the knowing glint in Kakashi's visible eye. It was a clear sign that he was aware of how she had spent her day. Not wanting to engage in any teasing, she simply turned toward her room, choosing to ignore the situation entirely. As she settled in for the night, she couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. Today was amazing. I just wish Karen were a kunoichi from Konoha. If we weren't separated by so much distance, I know we could have something special. Kakashi-sensei, may I ask you something? Naruko inquired politely, looking up at her teacher. Kakashi glanced at her with an amused expression. Well, Naruko, you just did, he responded, a hint of amusement in his voice. Seeing her slightly exasperated reaction, he chuckled before adding, but yes, you may ask another question. Naruko took a deep breath. I was wondering if I could accompany you on the diplomatic mission, she said earnestly. She knew it was a long shot, but there was no harm in asking. Kakashi regarded her with a curious yet serious expression, assessing how determined she truly was. Given the mission's importance to Konoha's future, it wasn't a decision he could take lightly. After a brief but intense moment of silent consideration, he finally relented, on one condition. If the Kuzujonin leading the discussions allows it, you may come. However, there are strict rules you must follow, Kakashi explained. You are not to speak at all during the discussions, as any comment could influence the negotiations. You will simply observe, listening carefully and taking mental notes. You won't be permitted to bring a book or paper into the room. Naruko nodded quickly, a bit nervous at how serious her usually laid-back sensei had become. It was a rare sight, especially compared to his usual habits of arriving late and reading his ever-present novel. As they arrived at the meeting location, a tall figure greeted them, his tone polite yet carrying an edge of irritation. Kakashi-san, I was under the impression that only the two of us would be attending this discussion. Why is there an additional person? Kakashi responded with his signature eye smile, a gesture that managed to be both polite and slightly condescending at the same time. And yet, you have 3 Anbu operatives positioned in the room, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. That's rather unexpected, wouldn't you say? He countered in a falsely cheerful tone. The Kuzujonin absorbed the remark without reacting, then turned his attention to Naruko. And who might you be, young one? Shouldn't you be training with your teammates instead of attending a formal meeting? Naruko hesitated momentarily, remembering Kakashi's instructions to remain silent. She glanced at her sensei for guidance, and with a slight nod from him, she decided to respond. I aspire to become the Hokage one day, sir, she said respectfully. To achieve that, I know I must be not only a strong shinobi but also skilled in diplomacy. Opportunities to observe high-level negotiations are rare for ninja at my level. When I learned about this mission, I hope to watch and learn from experienced jonin on how these discussions are conducted. She concluded with a small bow, ensuring her demeanor remained as polite as possible. The jonin commander raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by Naruko's composure and level-headed response. He had expected someone her age to be far less disciplined. After a thoughtful pause, he gestured toward the empty seats. Very well. Take a seat. As they settled in, the commander glanced at the crutches beside Naruko. Ah, so you're the student of Kakashi's who suffered the leg injury, he remarked, his tone shifting to mild curiosity. He seemed interested in striking up a conversation with the young kunoichi. Naruko simply nodded in acknowledgement, prepared to listen and learn from the discussion ahead. The meeting concluded smoothly, with both sides, Kakashi Hatake and the jonin commander of Kusagakure, pleased with the outcome. Each believed their village had secured the better end of the agreement. Konoha would now receive poisons from Kusagakure at a significantly reduced cost compared to other villages. In return, Kusagakure and, to a lesser extent, the entire land of grass would benefit from lower import fees on red meat and grain products. As they exited the meeting room, Kakashi turned to Naruko, eager to assess what she had observed during the discussion. "So, Naruko, what did you pick up?" he asked, curious to see how well his sensei's daughter could interpret hidden messages and subtle cues in a negotiation. Without diverting her attention from the path ahead, Naruko responded. "Honestly, a lot of what I missed was because I didn't fully understand the context of your conversation. However, I did notice that whenever you irritated him, he had a slight twitch near his right eye. If I had formal training in reading people's emotions through their facial expressions, I probably would have picked up more." Kakashi nodded, clearly impressed. The fact that Naruko had picked up on even that much was commendable. Naruko's transformation over the past month still astounded him. She had gone from being loud and impulsive to someone noticeably more composed, polite, and observant, though she still had moments of her former energy. While she lacked knowledge in certain areas, her attitude and behavior had improved dramatically. Kakashi wished he knew what had triggered this change so he could thank whoever was responsible. He was certain it wasn't the Sandaime, as even the third Hokage had been surprised by Naruko's newfound maturity. Once Team 7 returned to their assigned apartment, Kakashi was preparing to leave and check on Sasuke and Sakura to see what they were up to. Just as he was about to step out, Naruko spoke up, asking if there was anything productive she could do during their downtime. "Well, Naruko, you should work on the Academy Chakra Control exercise, specifically, practicing how to stick objects to your body. Strengthening your chakra control is crucial, especially because of the QB," Kakashi explained. "While your chakra reserves are incredibly vast, even greater than mine, your control is lacking. Improving it will help you fully utilize your chakra and make learning jutsu easier, preventing accidents." Naruko listened attentively, though her expression briefly shifted into a grimace at the mention of the QB. "The smaller and heavier the objects you practice with, the better your control will become," Kakashi added. "Anyway, I should check on Sakura and Sasuke now." With that, he vanished in a blur using the Sunshine technique. As expected, Kakashi arrived 3 hours late the next day. However, instead of their usual teamwork exercises followed by D-rank missions, he had something different planned. "Today, we're introducing a new type of training," he announced. Immediately, Sasuke, Naruko, and Sakura turned their attention toward their sensei, eager to hear what he had in store for them. "It's called tree climbing." Kakashi proceeded to explain the technique. "Use the kunai in front of you to mark how high you manage to climb. Each attempt, aim to surpass your previous mark. This will serve as motivation to improve," he instructed, wanting to gauge his students' progress in their first real chakra control training. As expected, Naruko's first attempt sent her flying backward the moment her foot touched the tree. Sasuke experienced a similar outcome, as both had applied too much chakra. Meanwhile, Sakura demonstrated impressive control, reaching the third branch with ease. She perched there proudly, hoping to earn Sasuke's admiration. "Oh, it seems the one with the best chakra control is Sakura," Kakashi remarked, deliberately trying to stir a bit of competitiveness between his students. "Sasuke-kun was supposed to praise me. Why does this always happen?" Sakura thought dejectedly, frustrated that things weren't going as she had hoped. Kakashi observed the team dynamic with mild amusement, noting the way they interacted. "At this rate, maybe it's Sakura, not someone else, who is closest to becoming Hokage," he mused aloud. Naruko frowned in concentration, determined not to let his words discourage her. Kakashi then turned his teasing toward Sasuke. Maybe the Uchiha clan wasn't as great as everyone claimed. He trailed off, watching as Sasuke's usual calm expression darkened into a deep scowl. Realizing what their sensei was doing, Sakura attempted to defend Sasuke, hoping to earn his favor. "Hey, cut it out, sensei," she protested, worried that Sasuke might get upset with her if she didn't speak up. Over the course of a month, while Team 7 focused on teamwork and refining their tree climbing skills, Naruko took the opportunity to enhance her abilities as a ninja on her own. The first technique she mastered was wind release, great breakthrough. In simple terms, This jutsu generated a powerful gust of wind in a chosen direction. When used by a skilled shinobi, it carried enough force to topple trees. The second technique she learned was wind release, violent wind palm. After reading about its properties, Naruko quickly recognized its potential beyond just offensive use. She speculated that this jutsu could counter various attacks, except fire-based techniques, having first-hand experience of how devastating a combined wind and fire jutsu could be, thanks to her teammate Sasuke. Unlike Great Breakthrough, this technique focused less on sheer destructive force and more on precision and control, making it an ability Naruko was eager to refine. One of her primary motivations for learning it was the idea of enhancing her kunai and shuriken throws. By channeling wind chakra into her weapons, she could significantly increase their speed and cutting power. Testing this theory, she switched her kunai holster to her left hand instead of her right. When she combined her kunai throw with violent wind palm, she watched in amazement as the weapon effortlessly sliced through one tree and embedded itself deep into a second before stopping. Excitement bubbled within her, made even greater by the physical changes she had noticed over the past month. Thanks to Karen's recommended diet plan, particularly the increase in calcium from drinking more milk, the Kyuubi's regenerative abilities worked even faster, strengthening her bones. Alongside healthier bones, her muscles gradually became more defined, providing better support for her growing strength. A glance in her newly purchased mirror revealed a transformation. Her skin had gained a healthier glow, her energy levels had improved, and she was filling out her clothes more comfortably. With each small achievement, her confidence grew, reflected in the way she carried herself. Her posture, once slouched from habit, was now steadily becoming straighter, not just from physical improvement, but from the pride she felt in her progress. The familiar shout of "You're late!" snapped Naruko out of her thoughts. Kakashi, unfazed as always, waved a hand dismissively. "Ah, my apologies, everyone. There was a burst fire hydrant near the Hokage's office, and I had to use my lightning manipulation to seal it so the water wouldn't keep spilling out." His tone was casual, as if expecting them to believe every word. Sakura, lacking much experience in detecting deception, immediately accepted his explanation. She trusted their sensei, after all, he was an authority figure. "Right. Well, how about we head to the Hokage's office and pick up a new mission for the day?" Kakashi suggested, his usual smile in place. It wasn't just a friendly gesture, it was the kind of expression that practically said, "Yes, you're stuck with D-rank missions, just like every other rookie team. No exceptions." As expected, his students were less than thrilled. Sasuke's irritation was visible, his usual stoic expression unable to fully conceal his displeasure. Sakura, meanwhile, seemed more concerned about the possibility of getting her outfit dirty. Naruko, though managing to keep her frustration in check, couldn't completely mask her feelings. To any experienced shinobi, it was obvious that she disliked these mundane missions just as much as her teammates did. The trio made their way through the village toward the Hokage's office. It wasn't until they were almost there that Sakura glanced around, realization dawning on her. There was no sign of a broken fire hydrant anywhere. She abruptly turned to face their sensei, pointing an accusatory finger. "You lied. You said you were fixing a hydrant, but I don't see any signs of one being broken. Let me guess, you were just reading that book of yours again, weren't you, Kakashi-sensei?" Her voice, as usual, carried across the street, drawing the attention of several villagers who had grown quite familiar with Kakashi's chronic lateness. Many onlookers chuckled knowingly, enjoying the scene playing out in front of them. Kakashi, unbothered as ever, merely responded in his typical fashion. Did you say something?" he mused, never once lifting his head from his book. The response only fueled Sakura's frustration. Huffing in annoyance, she spun on her heel and marched ahead, determined to reach the Hokage's office as quickly as possible. If they could get a mission soon, maybe, just maybe, she could put the embarrassment of the moment behind her. Hokage's office. As Team 7 stood before the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi glanced down at the document in front of him, detailing their next assigned mission. He cleared his throat before reading aloud, Your next mission includes babysitting Yoji-sama's infant son, assisting with grocery shopping in a nearby town, and helping to harvest potatoes. His gaze shifted toward the team, observing their reactions closely. At first, Hiruzen expected Naruko to protest immediately, demanding a more challenging assignment, much like that Inuzuka boy had done just the week before. However, to his surprise, Naruko remained composed, showing remarkable restraint. For a brief moment, it seemed as though she would simply accept the mission without complaint. But then, the patience cracked. "Hokage-sama," Naruko finally spoke, using a more formal address that made the elderly leader inwardly cringe. He wasn't entirely sure how he felt about this new version of Naruko. The old Naruko had been bursting with energy, radiating an infectious enthusiasm that reminded him so much of her mother, aside from the rather persistent admiration she had for Sakura. This version of Naruko, however, felt more subdued. Her emotions were restrained, and the boundless joy she once exuded seemed dulled. "I believe our team is more than capable of handling a C-ranked mission," she continued confidently. "We successfully completed a B-ranked diplomatic mission to Kusa, where we faced off against an experienced Chunin. We managed to hold our own in battle, and with only minimal assistance from Kakashi-sensei at the end, we emerged victorious. Even before that, we were standing our ground, fighting against a Chunin who was using high B-ranked and even low A-ranked jutsu against us. And if I remember correctly, we were winning at that time, weren't we, Sasuke?" she asked, turning to her dark-haired teammate. The male teammate gave a nod as he caught on to the persuasive approach Naruko was using to convince the Hokage to assign their team a more challenging mission. Amused by the young ninja's attempt at negotiation, the Sandaime Hokage decided to engage in a battle of words. If Naruko could successfully persuade him, he would grant their team a C-ranked mission. After all, they had Kakashi as their sensei. What could possibly go wrong? "Oh? You claim you had the situation completely under control. Then how do you explain the fact that you, Naruko, sustained a broken leg during the mission? Care to elaborate?" the Sandaime questioned, his eyes twinkling with amusement as he observed the blonde-haired girl attempting to talk her way out of the predicament she had placed herself in. Without missing a beat, Naruko responded with confidence, "Actually, I believe that only reinforces my point. It proves that even when faced with adversity, our team perseveres and completes the mission, just as any Chunin or Jonin would." Her natural charisma shone through, drawing others into her perspective and making them see things her way. Hiruzen's expression shifted slightly as he listened to her words, momentarily taken aback. For a brief second, it was as if he were looking at a ghost. Minato's presence seemed to flicker in his daughter's determined stance and eloquent argument. Standing beside the Hokage, Iruka had been about to argue that Naruko and her teammates still needed more experience before taking on a C-ranked mission. However, after hearing how she spoke about enduring hardship, powering through even a broken leg to achieve victory, Iruka found himself reconsidering. Maybe she really was ready for something more challenging. He studied Naruko carefully. On one hand, he was impressed with the maturity she had been displaying ever since that incident. She had started to settle into the role of a shinobi with a newfound level of seriousness. For now, Iruka decided to hold his tongue, choosing instead to see how the conversation between the Sandaime and Team 7 would unfold. "All right, I'll allow it." With those words from the Hokage, all eyes in Team 7 immediately focused on him, anticipation filling the air as they waited to hear the details of their new mission. Somehow managing to keep his pipe in place while speaking clearly, Hiruzen continued addressing the young Jonin and their sensei. "You will be assigned a C-ranked mission," he confirmed, considering the potential outcomes. He knew that if anything serious were to occur, Kakashi would be more than capable of handling the situation. With a motion of his hand, he signaled for the Chunin on guard duty to escort Team 7's client into the room. Moments later, a man entered, his movements unsteady, his breath heavy with the scent of alcohol. Leaning against the wall for support, he took several large gulps from a bottle of liquor, his inebriated state obvious to all. To Naruko, the lack of respect the man displayed was unbelievable. If she had been in the Hokage's position, she would have been deeply insulted by someone showing up in such a state. However, she remained silent, not wanting to jeopardize the mission she had worked so hard to secure. What is this nonsense? I hired real ninjas, not a bunch of kids fresh out of school. Look at the short one, is she even old enough to be a ninja? Tazuna slurred, the alcohol in his bottle swishing as he tried, and failed, to steady himself. While Naruko had been growing rapidly thanks to the nourishment her body desperately needed, her growth spurt was still a few months away. She clenched her fists but held her tongue, determined to prove through action, not words, that she and her team were more than capable of handling whatever lay ahead. I am the renowned bridge-building expert, Tazuna, the elderly man declared, pausing momentarily as his vision blurred, making it seem as if there were two Sakuras before him. He took a steadying breath before continuing, once I return to my homeland, your duty will be to ensure my safety while I complete the bridge. Addressing the 4 ninja he had hired for protection, Tazuna's words carried a mix of authority and overconfidence, despite his slightly intoxicated state. Understood. We'll meet you at the front gates of Konoha in 2 hours to begin the mission, Kakashi stated, watching as their client sluggishly nodded before stumbling backward out of the room, nearly tripping over his own feet. As the door closed, Naruko voiced her thoughts about their first mission outside the village. That man. I really hope this assignment goes by quickly. I don't think I can handle spending too much time around him, she muttered, glancing at her teammates. Both Sakura and Sasuke gave small nods, sharing similar sentiments about the client who had questioned their capabilities as ninja. Kakashi, ever the composed leader, looked down at the mission scroll before addressing his team. All right then, Team 7, head home and pack your essentials. According to the mission details, we'll be away for approximately a month. A cheerful smile appeared behind his mask as he gauged their reactions. The collective groan from his students was almost music to his ears. It wasn't too difficult for Naruko to pack up her clothes and gather the essentials she would need for her journey to the Land of Waves. Once everything was in order, she made her way to Ichiraku Ramen to enjoy a meal and catch up with Ayame and Tucci, chatting about what had been happening in their lives. As soon as Naruko and Kakashi arrived at the village gates and made their presence known, Sakura immediately spoke up in her usual loud manner, without considering that Naruko might have experienced something significant during their time apart. Naruko? Where have you been? We've been waiting for over half an hour. She exclaimed, her voice carrying through the area, drawing the attention of those nearby. Many villagers paused to listen, curious about how Naruko would respond. Sakura. Be quiet, Naruko said in an uncharacteristically cold tone, catching Sakura off guard. Sakura, having grown up somewhat spoiled due to her friendship with Ino, still believed that Naruko's long-standing feelings for her meant she could demand answers and get her way. No, Naruko. Do you realize how this could affect our mission record? Because of your selfishness, Sasuke might not get assigned to another mission anytime soon. She scolded, her frustration clear. Nearby, a drunken man, Tazuna, their client, spoke up, clearly irritated. Where do you think you've been, girl? I could have been home working on my bridge, but no. You just had to delay everything, making us all suffer because of your choices, he grumbled, swaying slightly as he struggled to keep his balance. Naruko turned her gaze to him, her expression serious. Tazuna, I'd be careful with what you say. My patience has limits, she said, her voice carrying an icy edge that sent a chill through Sakura. The pink-haired girl had always assumed that Naruko would return to her usual energetic and carefree self, but this shift in demeanor unsettled her. Observing the interaction, Kakashi let out a quiet sigh. While Naruko had a right to feel irritated, this stark change in her attitude was something he needed to keep an eye on. He silently hoped that the mission would proceed smoothly, as the growing tension within the team was already becoming a concern. Because Tazuna was a civilian, Team 7 had to maintain a slower walking pace, one that an older, out-of-shape man could keep up with. Meanwhile, Sasuke, the dark-haired Uchiha, grew increasingly impatient. He had expected some form of combat with rogue mercenaries by now, yet nothing had happened. That, however, was about to change. Kakashi, shifting his focus from Sakura to the road ahead, noticed a puddle nearby. Given that it hadn't rained in days, he immediately recognized it as an ambush set up by enemy shinobi. He remained alert, curious to see how his students would react. Suddenly, two ninja from the Hidden Mist village emerged from the puddle, launching themselves toward Team 7's leader with a coordinated attack using their chained gauntlets. Naruko was the first to react, swiftly leaping back to create distance between herself and the approaching enemies. Without hesitation, she formed a hand seal and took a deep breath. Wind release, air bullet jutsu. She called out, expelling a powerful, compressed blast of air toward the slight gap between the two attackers. The two Chunin brothers from Kirigakure instinctively evaded the attack in the most energy-efficient manner, assuming their Genin opponent was being overly confident in attempting to defeat them both with a single jutsu. However, the sheer force of the wind release technique was so intense that it shattered the chain linking them, leaving the demon brothers separated. Observing the battle, Sasuke decided it was time to step in, unwilling to let Naruko handle everything alone. Without hesitation, he engaged Maizu, taking over the fight from Naruko, who had no objections. Seeing this, Naruko quickly redirected her focus toward Gozu, ensuring that he remained occupied and unable to assist his brother in the fight against Sasuke. Engaging in a taijutsu battle was something Naruko enjoyed, as it allowed her to engage her opponent directly and make use of her agility and reflexes to gain an advantage. With a slight enhancement from Raiten Chakra, Kakashi appeared seemingly out of nowhere, at least in Sakura's eyes, and swiftly struck the two Chunin from the Hidden Mist on the back of their necks. His speed was beyond what anyone could follow, and before they could react, Gozu and Maizu collapsed instantly, unable to withstand the force of his attack. As Kakashi moved toward the fallen Chunin, he prepared to restrain them. Just then, a relieved voice rang through the pathway. "Kakashi-sensei, you're all right." Sakura called out, clearly overjoyed. The thought of losing her teacher had unsettled her, and seeing him safe was a great relief. However, curiosity quickly replaced her relief as she asked a question she felt she should have already known the answer to. "How did you manage to escape?" she asked, confusion evident in her tone. After all, she had seen her sensei disappear right in front of her eyes with no clear explanation. In response, Kakashi simply glanced toward the log he had used as a replacement. "TCH, such a show-off. I could have handled my opponent, but of course, Kakashi had to swoop in and take my fight away," Sasuke thought. At least he did the same to Naruko, so she didn't get any experience either. Sensei didn't have to interfere. I was confident I could win on my own. Oh well. At least this time, I didn't hesitate like I did in our last mission, Sasuke reflected, shifting his focus back to Kakashi, who now had his attention locked onto Tazuna. The bridge builder was visibly nervous under the Jonin's piercing gaze. Kakashi had exceptional control over his killing intent, ensuring that only Tazuna felt its weight. Beads of sweat formed on the old man's forehead as he struggled to maintain composure. He felt as though he were a weak scarecrow surrounded by crows, all waiting to swoop in. Taking a shaky breath, he finally spoke. "You're right. There's a very dangerous man after my life." Kakashi, who was internally amused by how often Tazuna used the word very, maintained his usual calm demeanor. His tone was casual, but his sharp gaze never wavered, keenly observing the man for any signs of dishonesty. "Very dangerous, huh?" Kakashi said, subtly prompting more information from the bridge builder. Unaware that Kakashi was teasing him, Tazuna let out a weary sigh and continued. "Yes. You probably already know who I'm talking about. His name is Gato." Kakashi's visible eye widened slightly in recognition. "Gato? From that major shipping company? He's supposed to be one of the wealthiest men in the world." The revelation surprised him. Someone with such vast resources targeting Tazuna meant this situation was far more serious than he had initially thought. Grateful that Kakashi was familiar with the name, Tazuna went on to explain why such a powerful businessman would want him eliminated. "Yes. Officially, he runs a large shipping company, but behind the scenes, he's involved in smuggling, illegal trade, and other criminal activities. He uses mercenaries, rogue ninja, and gang members to seize control over businesses and even entire nations. He's a ruthless man. As he finished speaking, he took a quick swig from his bottle of sake. Continuing, he elaborated on the situation. About a year ago, Gato set his sights on the land of waves. Using his wealth and influence, he quickly took control of our entire shipping industry, which is the backbone of our economy. Now, he has complete control over all trade in and out of the country. The only thing that threatens his monopoly is the completion of the bridge. If it's finished, people will have another way to transport goods, and his grip on the land of waves will weaken. The land of waves is incredibly poor, even our daimyo struggles financially. That's why we couldn't afford a B-ranked mission, Tazuna explained, his tone filled with worry, as if he expected something terrible to happen at any moment. Realizing that his words weren't having the desired effect, he quickly changed his approach. If you abandon the mission now, I'll almost certainly be in danger. But don't worry about me, if something happens, my sweet 10-year-old grandson will just be sad for a few days. Tazuna attempted to appeal to their sympathy, hoping to secure their protection. That was the final straw for Naruko. She stepped into the conversation, clearly frustrated by his attempt to manipulate them with guilt. She couldn't stand the way he was speaking, especially to people who had endured far harsher childhoods. Losing a grandfather was heartbreaking, but from the way Tazuna spoke, the boy still had a mother or father to care for him. Naruko had always been quick-witted, a skill that shone through in the battle strategies she devised on the fly. However, after spending significant time in the library, her sharp thinking was no longer limited to combat alone. It will be a valuable lesson for the child, Naruko stated firmly. You're speaking to shinobi, individuals who have faced hardships far beyond what most civilians could imagine, yet we don't waste time complaining about our circumstances. We've all endured difficult trials from a young age, and it's not as though this situation is any different. Some of us have faced betrayal from those closest to us, while others have grown up without families at all. What you're describing isn't new to us. Her tone was cold, as she had never gotten along well with the client from the moment he had stumbled into the Hokage's office, reeking of alcohol. Now, after discovering that he had misrepresented the difficulty of the mission, Naruko was even more irritated, especially with the lingering rush of adrenaline from their recent battle. Sakura, for her part, was stunned. She couldn't believe Naruko would so bluntly suggest that a child should experience the loss of a loved one. She was left speechless, unable to form a response to her blonde teammate's words. On the other hand, Sasuke and Kakashi silently agreed with Naruko's perspective. They, too, had endured harsh upbringings, and in comparison to their own painful pasts, simply learning about a family member's passing seemed far less severe. Tazuna, shocked by Naruko's bluntness, scrambled for a way to persuade the team to continue protecting him and his home. Oh, well, my daughter will spend the rest of her life resenting the Hidden Leaf for allowing her father to die, he blurted out in desperation, trying to gain their sympathy. Unfortunately for him, his attempt at manipulation did not go as planned. Naruko, demonstrating the keen insight of the clan she hoped to join, immediately recognized his fear and pressed forward. She won't even know that you made it to the Leaf Village at all. As far as anyone else is concerned, you could have just as easily been taken down by one of Gato's hired mercenaries. That's actually more likely than us failing to protect you, she stated calmly. Seeing the flicker of realization on Tazuna's face, Naruko continued, you understand this as well as we do. So, instead of grasping at straws, why don't you give us a real reason to assist you? Otherwise, as protocol dictates, we'll be returning to report an incorrect mission classification, and your family will be required to pay the proper cost for a B-rank mission. This mission has escalated in danger, considering that we've already encountered Chunin-level opponents from a hidden village. Her tone carried no malice, just a matter-of-fact certainty. The truth was, Naruko had never liked Tazuna, and she viewed this as a fitting consequence for his deception. Falsely classifying a mission was a serious offense, it put lives at unnecessary risk, something that shinobi already faced enough of in their line of work. Realizing that he had no solid argument left, and weighed down by both fear and guilt, the old man collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by his emotions. Tears streamed down his face as he silently mourned the crumbling hope he had for his homeland's restoration. Kakashi, impressed by how Naruko had handled the situation, gave her an approving nod. When she glanced at him for confirmation, she was met with his signature eye smile. Meanwhile, Sasuke clenched his fists, silently cursing himself. If he had spoken up sooner, he might have been able to steer the mission in a direction that would allow him to test his newly awakened Sharingan against stronger opponents. Sakura, however, had mixed feelings. On one hand, she admired Naruko's ability to stand up to a client, something Sakura knew she wouldn't have been able to do. But at the same time, she worried. What Naruko had just done, while effective, felt harsh. Would she continue to grow colder as time passed? Sensing the weight of the moment, Kakashi turned back to their former client, now reduced to tears. Though he had no obligation to do so, Kakashi spoke gently, trying to ease the man's guilt over what he saw as condemning his country to continued hardship. Kakashi had witnessed countless tragedies during his time in the Anbu, but no matter how many times he had faced such moments, they never became easier. Tazuna-san, if you had approached the Hokage and been honest about your circumstances, arrangements could have been made for a payment plan. This would have allowed the proper shinobi team to be assigned to your mission, and you could have gradually paid for the service as your village recovered. However, since you chose to misrepresent the mission's ranking, a serious breach of trust in dealings with a ninja village, your contract with the Hidden Leaf Village is now officially terminated. Kakashi stated in a composed yet firm tone. Turning his attention away from the older man, Kakashi addressed his team with authority. All right, team, we're heading back now. Without further delay, he leapt into the trees, swiftly followed by Naruko, Sasuke, and Sakura. The team moved at a much faster pace than they had maintained over the past 2 days. Once they had settled into a steady rhythm, Sakura finally voiced a concern that had been on her mind. Naruko, don't you think you were too harsh on Tazuna? The old you would have never done that, you would have tried to save them, she said, her voice starting soft but rising in intensity as she spoke. Unbeknownst to Sakura, both Sasuke and Kakashi were listening carefully, curious about Naruko's reasoning. After a brief pause, Naruko finally responded. Recently, I've been spending a lot of time in the library, reading about the responsibilities of the Hokage. I still want to become Hokage one day, she explained. Kakashi quickly understood where she was going with this, but Sasuke and Sakura seemed to need further clarification. The Hokage must always act in the best interest of Konoha, Naruko continued. For our village, losing 4 of its shinobi, especially one who is the last of his bloodline, would be far more damaging than helping another nation overthrow a tyrant. The Uchiha clan was once one of the strongest in Konoha, and the village would want Sasuke to restore that legacy. Risking our team, including an elite jonin, for a foreign conflict could have severe consequences. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged glances, realizing the deeper meaning behind Naruko's words. Sometimes, making the right choice meant making the harder choice. Sensing the heaviness of the conversation, Naruko decided to lighten the mood. Besides, at least we don't have to deal with that old man anymore. I couldn't stand how loudly he snored. I thought I'd lose my mind if I had to listen to that for a whole month, she added with a grin. No one on Team Kakashi could argue with that. Tazuna's snoring had been so loud that sleeping had been nearly impossible. The alcohol in his system made things even worse, as he would fall asleep in mere minutes, leaving the others struggling to get any rest. For someone like Kakashi, who had trained to wake up at even the slightest noise, it had been a nightmare. Over the past 2 nights, he had barely managed 3 hours of sleep. Now, at last, he could look forward to some much-needed rest. With their mission no longer requiring the protection of a client, Kakashi saw an opportunity to give his team some practical training. He assigned them night watch shifts, ensuring they stayed sharp while keeping an eye on their surroundings. As the early light of dawn began to filter through the trees, Kakashi took a moment to write his mission report for the Hokage, summarizing the events that had unfolded. The mission proceeded smoothly for the first 2 days. However, on the 3rd day, I noticed an out-of-place puddle, a clear sign that something was wrong. My suspicions were confirmed when we were ambushed by the Demon Brothers, two rogue Chunin from the Hidden Mist. To assess my team's capabilities, I faked my incapacitation, observing how they would react. Naruko quickly responded by using a wind release technique, breaking the chain weapon the attackers used. From there, both Naruko and Sasuke engaged the enemies in close combat, utilizing their taijutsu skills. In the end, I stepped in to subdue the rogue Chunin and sent a message to request Anbu support in securing the captives. At that point, Tazuna revealed the true nature of his mission. He explained that Gato, the head of Gato Shipping Company, had taken control of the entire Wave country through corrupt and illegal means, creating a stranglehold on the people's economy and freedom. Kakashi paused, glancing toward his sleeping students. This mission had turned out to be far more complex than expected, and the weight of leadership was beginning to show in Naruko's decisions. He would need to keep a close eye on her as she continued to grow into the shinobi she aspired to be. When the man attempted to guilt our team into accepting the mission, Naruko responded to Tazuna in a composed yet cold manner, remarking that the client's survival, or lack thereof, could serve as valuable character development for the young boy. As we set off for home, my female student approached Naruko, expressing her concerns. She was unsettled, fearing that Naruko was changing too rapidly and exhibiting traits reminiscent of Orochimaru. However, Naruko's response offered me some reassurance. She explained that she had been studying the responsibilities of a cage and had acted in a way she believed was in the best interest of Konoha. I would like to request additional missions that involve travel after we return to Konoha to retrieve the necessary scrolls. This will allow me to closely observe the extent of Naruko's transformation and determine whether it is a cause for concern, if any intervention is necessary. Kakashi Hatake. After completing the letter, Kakashi silently summoned Baisuke to deliver the message to the third Hokage through the summoning realm, ensuring that Hiruzen was informed about the unexpected complications of the mission. All of this was done discreetly, as Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruko were fast asleep. Though Naruko had yet to break her habit of shifting in her sleep, her tightly secured sleeping bag fortunately kept her movements contained. That's all for now. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more exciting updates. Thanks for your support. Best regards. Anime Dreams.